Do you know what it's like to wake up one morning and realize that your body no longer responds like it used to? I know. And it was exactly at age 62 that I realized that I had wasted 2 precious years trying to live as if I were still 40. It almost cost me not only my health, but the chance to really enjoy what was left of my journey. Hello, my name is Carlos. I'm 83 years old, and if you're over 60 or know someone in that stage of life, I need to share something that no one had the courage to tell me. Something that could have completely transformed my old age. I made mistakes. Mistakes that cost me time, health, and memories I can never get back. And the saddest part? They were all avoidable. I remember it like it was yesterday. It was a Sunday afternoon. My grandchildren were playing in the backyard, and I, stubborn as I always was, decided that I would fix the roof of the house myself. I've always done this, I thought to myself. Why would it be any different now? I climbed those stairs, feeling the weight of the years, but ignoring the signs my body was giving me. Knees hurting, breathing shorter, balance not so accurate. It's just lack of exercise, I lied to myself. That's when I slipped. The world spun in slow motion. I remember my granddaughter's frightened face looking up, my wife's scream, and then darkness. I woke up in the hospital with a broken hip and a lesson I will carry with me forever. There are things you simply shouldn't do after 60, not because you're incapable, but because you're wise. 3 months of recovery. 90 days of staring out the window, watching life happen outside while I was confined to a bed. 90 days to reflect on how my pride and stubbornness had stolen my most precious time. It was there, in that hospital room, that I began to make a mental list of the things I should never have done after 60. A list that I share with you today, not as an expert, but as someone who learned the hard way. The first thing I learned not to do was just that. Ignore the limits of my body. I'm not talking about giving up on life or giving in to old age. Far from it. I'm talking about respecting the body that has carried us for decades. My father used to say, Carlos, an intelligent man knows his limitations. And me, I thought limitations were for the weak. How absurd. Now I understand that recognizing limitations is the first step to overcoming them wisely. At the hospital, while the nurses were changing my bandages, I met Alberto, a 75-year-old man who was in the next room. Unlike me, he was there for a routine checkup. I come every month, he told me with a quiet smile. My daughter calls me over the top, but I'd rather be called over the top than stubborn at my funeral. Alberto understood something that took me years to comprehend. After 60, ignoring preventive health is like driving blindfolded on a winding road. You might reach your destination, but your chances are slim. And here's the second big mistake I made after turning 60, neglecting medical checkups. How many times have I put off appointments, ignored symptoms, put off tests? It's just a little pain, I said. It'll go away. I remember a family lunch 2 years before my fall. My daughter, a doctor, noticed something about my gait. Dad, you're limping a little. Have you seen an orthopedist? I replied with a laugh. That's just getting older, daughter. Relax. What I didn't know was that those little age things were the first signs of osteoarthritis that, if treated at that time, wouldn't have caused me so much pain later. And maybe, who knows, I wouldn't have fallen down those stairs. It's strange how, after 60, we sometimes develop this complicated relationship with our health. We vacillate between ignoring it completely or becoming hypochondriacs. Neither extreme is healthy. The truth, after 60, every signal from our body is a message. Ignoring it is not courageous, it is reckless. Speaking of recklessness, there is something I have observed in many friends my age, and I confess, I did it myself for a while. Social isolation. This is, without a doubt, one of the biggest mistakes someone can make after 60. It's easy to fall into this trap. Children grow up and move on with their lives. Friends start to leave this world. Retirement arrives and suddenly the routine of decades disappears. We stay home, watching life through the window or, worse, on television. That's what happened to my friend Antonio. We worked together for 30 years in the same company. When we retired, we agreed to meet regularly, play dominoes, have coffee. At first, we kept our promise. Then our meetings became more infrequent. "I'm tired today," he would say on the phone. "Let's do it next week." The next week turned into the next month, which turned into the next year. The last time I visited him, I found a different man. Empty stare, sparse conversation, almost no interest in life. "What happened to you, Antonio?" I asked, genuinely concerned. He shrugged. "Life happened, Carlos. Or rather, life ended." I left with a heavy heart, promising myself that I would never allow that isolation virus to infect me. Because that's what isolation is after 60. A virus that first consumes your energy, then your emotions, and finally your will to live. Science proves it. Older people who maintain an active social life live longer, and most importantly, live better. It's not about having hundreds of friends or going out every night. It's about maintaining meaningful connections, feeling part of something bigger than ourselves. After my recovery from a broken hip, I understood this more deeply. It was the daily phone calls from friends, the visits from grandchildren, the chess games with my neighbor that made those days bearable. Medicine healed my body, but it was human connections that healed my soul. If you're over 60 and are isolating yourself, I beg you, reconsider. Call that old friend. Accept that invitation to your grandchild's birthday party, even if it's raining. Join a book group, a walking group, a prayer group, whatever interests you. Isolation after 60 is not just a mistake. It is a sentence you impose on yourself. And believe me, no crime deserves this punishment. Speaking of self-inflicted punishments, there's one that's particularly cruel and common among us seniors. Refusing to learn new things, especially technology. Oh, how resistant I was. I remember when my son gave me a smartphone about 10 years ago. I looked at that device as if it were an alien. "Dad, it will make your life easier," he insisted. "My life is already easy enough with my landline, thank you," I replied, putting the gift in the drawer, where it sat for months. How foolish I was. Today, this same device is my connection to the world. I use it to talk to my grandchildren who live far away, to read the news, to look up recipes, to find my way around when I'm out and about. Technology is not the enemy of the elderly. It is a powerful ally. Sure, there is a learning curve, sometimes steep, but the effort is infinitely worth it. Maria, my wife of 80 years, is living proof of this. When the pandemic forced us into isolation in 2020, she was the one who insisted that we learn to use Zoom to see our grandchildren. At first, I complained. "It's too complicated," I argued. She, with that patience that only the wives of stubborn men develop, replied, "And what is the alternative, Carlos? Not seeing our grandchildren for months." Within a week, we were not just using Zoom, but attending online classes, attending church services, and catching up with old friends. Technology didn't just fill a void, it expanded our horizons at a time when many think they can only contract. This is a truth that I have only fully understood in recent years. After 60, the biggest mistake is not making mistakes trying to learn something new. It is giving up trying, believing that it is too late. I met Donna Zulmira in one of those computer courses for senior citizens that I started attending. At 92 years old, yes, 92, she was there, learning how to use Instagram to follow her great-granddaughter's travels. Her hands were shaking. She sometimes mixed up the apps, but she never, ever gave up. "Why do you try so hard?" I asked one day, amazed at her. "Persistence." She smiled, revealing the deep wrinkles that framed her face. "My dear, death will come anyway. Until then, I want to live each day as if it were a discovery. The day I stop learning is the day I begin to die. I carry these words with me like a mantra, because that's exactly what it is. After 60, refusing to learn is refusing to live fully. And speaking of living fully, there's another common mistake I see in people my age: obsessively clinging to the past, especially old hurts. How easy it is to fall into this trap. As the years pass, memories of better times take on a golden glow, while unhealed wounds seem to deepen. I have a brother, Alfredo, with whom I haven't spoken in almost 20 years. It all started with a dispute over our parents' inheritance. Harsh words were exchanged, accusations made, doors slammed, and then silence. 2 decades of silence. It was my heart attack at age 75 that finally woke me up. Lying in that ICU bed, tubes everywhere, the constant beeping of the monitors, I had clarity about something that should be obvious. Life is too short for long-term heartaches. I asked Maria to find Alfredo, to invite him to visit me. She hesitated. "Are you sure, Carlos? You always said he was dead to you." "And I almost became a real dead man," I replied. "I don't want to go away carrying that weight." Alfredo came the next day. Entering the room timidly, he looked as old as I felt. Our eyes met, and in that moment, 20 years of resentment dissolved, like mist in the sun. "Sorry," was all I could say. He held my hand, his eyes watering. "Me too, brother. Me too." Today, Alfredo is once again part of my life. We have dinner. Together every week, we travel occasionally. We make up for lost time as best we can. But nothing will bring back those 20 years. No apology will erase the fact that our parents left without seeing their children reconciled. That our children grew up without knowing their cousins. This is a piece of advice I give from the heart. After you turn 60, don't carry around old grudges. Time, which is already so precious at this stage, becomes infinitely more valuable when it is not wasted on resentment. I remember my grandmother, a wise woman born in the 19th century, saying, "Holding on to anger is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die." When I was young, this phrase sounded like another old saying with no real application. Today, I understand its profound truth. Another common trap after 60, and one that I almost never escaped, is neglecting financial health, thinking that it's too late now. Retirement came to me as it does to many, with a significant drop in income. After decades of earning a comfortable salary, I saw my income practically cut in half. My expenses, however, did not decrease at the same rate. At first, I panicked. Then, I resigned myself. That's just how it is, I thought. Now I just have to wait for time to pass and hope that the money lasts until the end. What a dangerous mindset. It was my son-in-law, an accountant, who shook me out of this financial lethargy. "Mr. Carlos," he told me during a Sunday lunch, "you may still have 20, 30 years ahead of you. You can't just sit back and hope." He was right, of course. Even at 65, I was still at the beginning of my new phase. I needed a plan, not resignation. We then began a process of late financial education. I learned about conservative investments, about how to cut expenses without sacrificing quality of life, about retirees' rights that I didn't even know existed. It was eye-opening to discover that many banks and financial institutions offer specific services for seniors, something I would never have discovered if I had continued with that "it's too late now" attitude. One of the biggest mistakes after 60 is to believe that financial planning is no longer necessary. In fact, it is more crucial than ever. It is not just about surviving, but about ensuring dignity and independence in the years that remain. Today, at 83, I am proud to say that my financial situation is stable and, more importantly, predictable. I will certainly not become rich, but I have peace of mind. And in my golden years, peace of mind is worth more than gold. Another painful lesson I learned was about the dangers of neglecting mental health after 60. For a long time, I believed that depression, anxiety, and other disorders were nonsense, or at most, something for young people. How wrong I was. The truth is that old age brings unique emotional challenges. The loss of loved ones becomes more frequent. The body changes, limiting some activities that once brought pleasure. The sense of purpose may diminish after retirement. It was after losing Maria 5 years ago that I truly understood the impact of mental health. 55 years of marriage ended on a quiet autumn morning when her heart simply stopped in her sleep. Over the next few months, I sank. It wasn't just sadness or grief. It was an existential void, a pain that transcended the emotional and manifested itself physically. I lost weight, lost sleep, lost interest in everything that once excited me. My daughter, noticing the signs, insisted that I seek professional help. I resisted, of course. A psychologist is for people who are crazy, I argued, repeating a nigh, outdated prejudice that I had carried for decades. I ended up giving in more to calm her down than out of conviction. And it was one of the best decisions I ever made. Dr. Paulo, my therapist, helped me understand that taking care of my mind is not a sign of weakness, but of wisdom. That seeking help is an act of courage, not cowardice. And most importantly, that mental health is not a luxury in old age. It is a fundamental necessity. Today, I maintain a routine that prioritizes my emotional well-being as much as my physical well-being. Meditation, daily walks, regular meetings with friends, activities that stimulate my brain. And yes, bi-weekly sessions with Dr. Paulo, which have become not only therapy, but a space for reflection and growth. If you are over 60 and feel that your mental health is fragile, don't make the mistake I almost made. Don't ignore it. Don't minimize it. Don't be ashamed. Seek help. Your future self will thank you. Speaking of being thankful, there is a mistake that I often observe in people my age, and that I also made for a long time. The inability to express gratitude for the small daily joys. It's curious how, as we get older, we can develop two opposing tendencies. Either we become more bitter, complaining about everything, or we discover a new capacity to appreciate the subtleties of life. Unfortunately, many choose the first path. They complain about the climate, the pain, the politics, the youth of today, the complicated technology. The list of complaints seems endless. I was like that for a while, I admit. After retirement, I developed a habit of constantly grumbling. My grandchildren even joked about me as Grumpy Grandpa. It was my granddaughter Laura, then just 8 years old, who taught me a lesson I will never forget. One afternoon when I was complaining about the excessive heat, she looked at me seriously and said, "Grandpa, do you know how many people wish they were alive to feel warm today?" That phrase, in its childish innocence, struck me like a bolt of lightning. How many people, really? How many friends had already left? How many would never reach 70 or 80 years old like me? That same day, I began an exercise that I still do today. Every night before I go to sleep, I write down 3 things I am grateful for. They can be big events or small joys. The important thing is to recognize that, despite the challenges of aging, there are always reasons to be grateful. Yesterday, for example, I wrote, "The sunset seen from my balcony, the surprise call from my son, the taste of fresh bread for breakfast." This practice has transformed my perspective. The same challenges are still there, the pain, the limitations, the losses. But now they share space with a genuine appreciation for the privilege of being alive, of still being able to experience the small wonders of everyday life. After 60, complaining is easy. Being thankful is revolutionary. And speaking of revolution, we come to one of the biggest mistakes that people my age make: stopping dreaming, setting goals, looking to the future with hope. Why make plans? Many people think, at this point, the game is pretty much over. What a tragic mistake. It is true that after 60, we are closer to the end than the beginning. But that doesn't mean there isn't a future to be built, dreams to be realized, goals to be achieved. At the age of 70, I started painting. I had never picked up a paintbrush before, except to paint walls. I had no artistic pretensions, just curiosity. Today, 8 exhibitions later, I am still surprised when someone is interested in buying one of my paintings. At 75, after the heart attack scare, I decided I would visit the sea for the first time. I was born in the interior of Minas Gerais, and although I traveled a lot for work, I had never had the opportunity to see the ocean. When I finally saw that blue expanse, I cried like a child. At 80, I published my first book, a collection of memories and reflections that began as a personal project and ended up finding interested readers. I tell these stories not to brag, but to illustrate a simple truth. Age may limit some possibilities, but it always opens up others. I know people who started businesses in their 70s, who graduated from college in their 80s, who found new loves in their 90s. The secret? They didn't confuse physical limitations with limitations in their dreams. I refuse to believe that after 60, life is just an epilogue, a final chapter where nothing new happens. On the contrary, it could be the beginning of an extraordinary phase, full of discoveries and achievements. As my father used to say, while there is life, there is a project. And I would add, while there is a project, there is life. Finally, perhaps the most subtle and dangerous mistake we make after 60, believing that we have nothing more to offer the world. This belief is insidious. It starts small, almost imperceptibly. Perhaps at a family gathering, where your opinion is politely ignored, or when someone automatically assumes that you won't understand a certain topic because of your age. Little by little, we internalize this message. We retreat. We become silent. We accept a secondary role in the grand narrative of life. That's what happened to Dona Conceição, my longtime neighbor. A retired teacher, she was always a brilliant, articulate, knowledgeable woman. After retiring, she gradually withdrew into herself. She rarely spoke out, even when the subject was her specialty. One day, talking about this, she confessed to me, "Carlos, sometimes I feel like I'm invisible, as if, as I've gotten older, I've become transparent." This is a painful reality that many of us face. Society often makes us invisible after a certain age. But, and this is the crucial point, we do not have to accept this invisibility. Dona Conceição certainly did not accept it. After our conversation, at the age of 78, she went back to school. Not to obtain diplomas or certificates, but to update her knowledge. She then volunteered in an adult literacy project in the outskirts of the city. On the first day, I thought the students would be disappointed to have such an old teacher, she told me later. To my surprise, many said they preferred to learn from someone who had lived long enough to understand the hardships of life. Today, at 87, Dona Conceição continues to teach. And more importantly, she continues to learn. Because that's what we discover when we avoid the common mistakes after 60, that we still have a lot to offer, a lot to learn, a lot to live. Society may try to convince us otherwise. It may try to push us to the margins, to that comfortable chair from which we are supposed to just observe the world, without any longer actively participating in it. Don't accept this. Your voice still matters. Your experience has value. Your presence makes a difference. At 83, I look back and see clearly the mistakes I made after turning 60. Ignoring my body, neglecting checkups, isolating myself socially, refusing to learn, holding on to hurts, neglecting my finances, ignoring my mental health, forgetting to be grateful, stopping dreaming, believing I had nothing left to offer. Mistakes that I hope you won't have to make. Because now you know. And knowing is the first step to choosing a different path. Old age is not a sentence. It is an opportunity to live with more wisdom, more purpose, more gratitude. Don't waste this opportunity with avoidable mistakes. Learn from mine and move forward, building a third age that, despite the inevitable limitations, is rich in meaning and joy. After all, it's not just about adding years to life, but life to years. And that, my friend, is within the reach of all of us, regardless of age.